Well, how cool is that? Love what the Lord's doing in and through our youth group right now. Welcome. My name is Brannen, and I get the privilege of being one of the pastors here, and we are taking this journey through the Gospel of Matthew. We're going to look at a very familiar story today, but before we go there, I want to tell you about some books that I have read to my kids. How many of you are fans of Chronicles of Narnia? Go ahead and raise your hand. Give me a woo. No? Okay, we'll get a couple again. There we go. I have read 3 of these books to my kids, and I'll say this, I think I enjoyed it more than they enjoy it, because I'm like, hey, we're going to read tonight, and they're like, again, Dad, I'm like, listen, guys, this is worth it spiritually. This is going to shape your heart in great ways, and they never took to it. But the 3rd book that we read was The Horse and His Boy. Love this particular book, and it's got some really beautiful teachings in it. But if you don't know about this book, it is about a kid named Shasta. And you go through this story with Shasta, and you just look at his life, and his life has been really hard and difficult. It starts all the way in the beginning, and he is found as a young child, a baby in a boat by himself, and he's found on the shore by this fisherman. In this area that is foreign to him, he's clearly not from this area. And so this fisherman finds him, he's on the brink of death. He ends up raising Shasta, but the problem is this guy, the fisherman, is a terrible man. And so he treated him horribly. He had no education. He had to do like hard labor all of his life. And then eventually one night he overhears the fisherman speaking with someone. And essentially he is hearing about him being sold into slavery. And so he makes a decision along with this horse that he's going to escape and he's going to leave. He doesn't want to be sold into slavery. And so the entire book chronicles this journey of him escaping. But he always has these constant fears. The authorities are after him because he's a runaway. He has these fears of these wild animals. At one point, there's these lions chasing him. Another point, these jackals are going to eat him while he sleeps. And then he has hostile people that he's dealing with constantly. He finds himself at one moment in the story sleeping among the tombs. I mean, you just look at his life and you're like, hardship after hardship after hardship. And he reaches a certain point in the book and he's just exhausted, completely exhausted. And it says this, and being very tired and having nothing inside of him, Shasta felt so sorry for himself that the tears rolled down his cheeks. He felt like he had nothing left, and he is just mourning his life. I think many of us can relate to Shasta in some ways, and maybe right now you're going through some kind of storm. You're going through a difficulty of life. You're suffering in a particular way, and you're like, I feel like I have nothing left inside of me, Lord. Like absolutely nothing. Or maybe you look over the course of your life and you're like, Lord, this happened and then this happened and then this happened. And it's just been one thing after another. And Lord, when I look back at my life, it's just been a life worth mourning over. Well, today we're going to, again, look at a very familiar passage. And I think what's going to happen is Jesus is going to give us a great deal of comfort in the midst of our suffering and pain. So we'll be in Matthew chapter 14, start in verse 22. And you'll recognize this story. Immediately he, speaking of Jesus, made the disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side while he dismissed the crowds. And after he had dismissed the crowds, he went up to the mountain to pray by himself. When evening came, he was there alone, but the boat by this time was a long way from the land, beaten by the waves, for the wind was against them. And in the 4th watch of the night, he came to them walking on the sea. But when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified and said, "It is a ghost," and they cried out in fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them saying, "Take heart, it is I. Do not be afraid." And Peter answered him, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." And he said, "Come." So Peter got out of the boat and walked on the water and came to Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid and began to sink. He cried out, "Lord, save me." And Jesus immediately reached out his hand, took hold of him, saying to him, "O you of little faith, why did you doubt?" And when he got into the boat, the wind ceased, and those in the boat worshiped him, saying, "Truly you are the Son of God." Again, a very familiar story. I don't know if you've ever considered this about the miracle that is performed here. This miracle actually deviates away from most of the miracles that we read about. When you read about most of the miracles in the Gospels, Jesus is going to meet a very tangible need through the miracle. So you think about the leper that comes to him, and he has this horrific skin condition and disease. And Jesus heals him of this horrific skin disease and condition. Think about a demon-possessed man that Jesus finds, and he's living amongst the graveyard, and he's out of his mind, and Jesus casts out the demons, and he's restored into a right mind. Or how about the paralytic whose friends brought him to Jesus, and the house was full, and so they went through the roof and dropped him down to Jesus, and Jesus restored his ability to walk, and he saved him from his sins. Or Jesus feeding the 5,000, which was a story right before this. Jesus knew that there was a very tangible need. They need to eat, they need to be fed, and Jesus performs this amazing miracle providing food for all of these people. So most miracles, Jesus is providing for a tangible need. Let me ask you this. What tangible need is being met by Jesus walking on water? From a physical perspective, there's nothing. So what is going on here? Jesus, why is this a part of the story and a part of your life? And here's what we're going to see. There are spiritual realities through this physical miracle. He's trying to teach them something about his kingdom, about how to trust him more fully. And so we're going to unpack this here. And the first thing we see is that Jesus sends his disciples into a storm. It literally says immediately he made the disciples get into a boat. When you look at the Greek word for made right there, it literally means forced. It's like a parent saying, I'm not asking you, I'm telling you to do something. I have to reiterate that to my kids sometimes. I'm like, hey, go do this. And they're like, I don't want to. And I'm like, oh, you thought that was a question. Oh, that wasn't a question. I was telling you to do something. The same is true here. He made them do something. He made them get into this boat. He forced them and said, get in the boat right now and head across the sea. And so they get into this boat and they begin to head across the sea. Now, we're not explicitly told why, but there's two things that we can infer from this. First, when you read John's account of the feeding of the 5,000, it says after he got done feeding the 5,000, the people wanted to make him king by force. Literally, they wanted to set a crown on his head and sit him on the throne, and they're like, it's time. It's time for political action. It's time for the military to begin to rise up, and we need to overthrow these Roman oppressors. In so many ways, the people thought he was coming to be a political figure, a military leader. And we, of course, know that the salvation that Jesus was offering in is far more grand than they could have ever imagined. No, he's going to beat and conquer the greatest enemy, our sin. He's ultimately going to save the world, and then he will restore all things, and he does sit on the throne. But they were looking at it very myopically about the nation of Israel. And he goes, no, it's much greater than that. And so maybe the reason why he made the disciples get in is because he didn't want them to get wrapped up in this like forcing Jesus to become king thing. He didn't want them to be influenced. He's like, all right, get away from these people, get in this boat and go. And then he dismisses the crowds. But here's what we certainly can infer from the story. It's pretty safe to assume that Jesus knew what was going to happen. That Jesus knew, I'm going to put them into a boat, and there's going to be some kind of storm that arises, and I'm going to show them my power through the storm. This was a part of a larger plan to shape his disciples. A larger plan to draw them into a deeper trust. I think for many of us, we need a radically different perspective when it comes to pain and suffering, because when we go through pain and suffering in life, our culture teaches us pain and suffering, there's only bad that comes from it. Like there can be no good that comes from it. So you need to free yourself immediately from whatever you're going through. Whatever pain, whatever hardship, whatever suffering you're going through, immediately free yourself from that. And when you read the scriptures, you actually read that no, the Lord uses and leverages a broken world for his glory, but also for our good. It's James, he's a half-brother of Jesus. He would later write a few decades later after this. And he would say this in James 1, count it all joy, my brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds. Now, we can't reconcile that. We have a difficulty reconciling joy and trials. So how does James reconcile this? He goes, "For you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. And let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing." In other words, Jesus' half-brother is teaching that whenever we go through something, a hardship, we can count it as joy. Now, we may not feel joy. We're like counting it up. Like, Lord, I'm marking this up in faith, joy that you're going to do something in me through the midst of whatever hardship or pain I'm going to go through. And I'm just going to trust you with that. Have you ever considered the opportunity that hardship offers? First, it provides an opportunity for us to depend on God. We become more dependent on God when we go through things. Listen, when life is really comfortable, when everything is going as I think it should go, my career, my parenting, my marriage, my finances, when everything's going well, it's really hard for me to be driven towards dependence on the Lord. But I notice when things begin to be disrupted in my life, and there's storms or there's trials, all of a sudden I find myself begging God on my knees, pursuing the Lord even more. You know, when Jesus sends them out on the water, do you know what the sea is symbolic of for a Jew? The sea was looked at as dangerous, as chaotic. It was even symbolic of death. And so Jesus is sending them out into the chaos and danger. And maybe it's providing an opportunity for them to learn how to trust him even more with everything. You know, the goal of the Christian life is not right now that we would be free from pain and suffering. That's what culture teaches. The goal is to be free from pain and suffering. The goal for the Christian, if you're a follower of Jesus, is not to be free from pain and suffering. It's to look more and more like Jesus no matter what happens. And so as the good and the bad and the ugly happens in my life, I want to grow in my faith and look more and more like Christ, whatever comes my way. So it's an opportunity to depend on God. How about this? It's an opportunity to grow. And certain characteristics like, think about this, forgiveness, courage, self-sacrifice, compassion, overcoming temptation. You know, those are only possible if hardship exists. Let me give you an example. If I see somebody in need, somebody struggling, and I offer them compassion, it's the struggle and the difficulty and the hardship that provides the opportunity for me to grow in compassion and love. And so there's times where we need to grow in some way, and the Lord sends us into a storm. And he does something in the midst of that propels us closer to him, matures us in the faith, and we look more and more like him. Second, we see that Jesus prays for his disciples in the storm. Now, the disciples, whenever the storm arises, they're approximately 3 to 4 miles off the shore. And the storm comes, and the rains and the waves and the wind are beginning to beat against the boat. Now, this is not the first time that these disciples have found themselves in this situation. You go to Matthew chapter 8. In Matthew chapter 8, there is a storm that is occurring. And they're all together, and Jesus is with them, and waves are literally barreling over the top of the boat. And they feel like they're sinking, and so they're like, "Jesus, wake up, don't you care? We're dying here." And Jesus stands up and calms the storm. But this is really different than Matthew chapter 8 right here. Because the difference between Matthew chapter 8 and Matthew chapter 14 is Jesus is not in the boat physically in chapter 14. What is Jesus doing? Well, Jesus is off praying. See, in many ways, they think in the midst of the storm, like God has abandoned us. Jesus abandoned us. He was with us in chapter 8, but now in chapter 14, he isn't with us. He made us go. Like we had no choice in the matter. He's like, get in the boat. And here it is. We're in the storm. He's completely abandoned us here. But what do we beautifully read is that Jesus is alone on the mountain praying for them at that moment. He's communing with the Father and praying for his disciples. And the same is true for us right now. You know, Jesus is exalted, sitting at the right hand of the Father, the place of power and prominence. And what is he doing? Let me read to you Romans 8. Romans 8, 31 through 34 says this. What then shall we say to these things? If God is for us, who can be against us? If he did not spare his own son, but gave him up for us all, how will he not also with him graciously give us all things? Who shall bring any charge against God's elect? It is God who justifies. Listen to this. Who is to condemn? Christ Jesus is the one who died, more than that, who was raised, who is at the right hand of God, who is indeed interceding for us. Right now, Christ is interceding for us. And so you may be going through a struggle and a hardship. You may be like mourning something right now and feel like the Lord has abandoned you. And here's the beautiful truth. He has not abandoned you. He is at the right hand of the Father, and he is interceding for you. You remember what interceding is? Interceding is stepping into the gap on behalf of somebody else. It's almost like Jesus has you in one hand and the Father in the other hand, and he goes, Father, I'm praying for them. I'm interceding for them. I want them to grow and look more and more like me. Father, do what only you can do in the midst of this. God did not abandon these disciples. Jesus did not leave them on their own. No, he is actively participating in the storm right now through his prayers. And not just that, as Jesus comes to his disciples in the storm. So we read that he was off alone praying on the mountain, but then he actually comes to them. When the storm is raging, it's 3 to 6 a.m. in the morning, the fourth watch. Jesus came to them walking on the water. And what do? They immediately begin to freak out. They're like, what in the world's going on? Who is this? Is this a ghost? And so they think it's a ghost, and then Jesus calls out to them. And he says, it is I, which is a powerful statement that echoes Exodus. In the book of Exodus, Moses is kind of having this wrestle with God. And he's like, God, what's your name? And the Lord says, I am. And essentially with this title, the Lord is not defining himself narrowly as a certain thing that we can put into a box. He's saying, I am. I'm everything. I'm the eternal, self-sufficient God who gives the source to everything that exists. I'm the sovereign one who rules and reigns. You can't narrowly put me into this little box. I am. So when Jesus calls out to them, he says, take heart. In other words, find courage. It is I. This is echoing exactly what God told Moses, I am. Saying, hey, the sovereign one is here, the one who rules and reigns. And he arrives in the most unexpected of ways. You think about all the ways that Jesus could have come to his disciples. And he comes to them walking on the water. Jesus tends to show up whenever we're going through hardship and difficulty in the most unexpected of ways. And so right now, if you're journeying through something and it's very hard, you feel like you're suffering, you're mourning over the difficulty of it, Jesus shows up in unexpected ways. And what you see is little evidences of his grace, that he has not left you, he has not forsaken you, he has not abandoned you. It's almost like these little bread trails that he gives to us, leading us to himself. Let me ask you this in just various ways, whatever you're going through right now. Let me just ask you a few questions. Sometimes we get consumed with the storm and we miss the bread trail to himself. First of all, how is God showing up in your life right now? How is God actively working and showing up in your life? Second, how is God's love evident in your life? And often I would tell you this, God will extend his love and his grace to you through the vehicle of other people. That you'll get a great feeling for how God loves you through how God's people are treating you and caring for you. And then how can I see God's love and care for me right here in this moment? And friends, if you press into these questions, though Jesus comes to you in unexpected of ways, you will see that he is just leaving a little trail to himself. These are evidences of God's grace in your life and in my life right now. And he's letting us know, I haven't left you. I haven't abandoned you. He's actively coming to us in the storm and the chaos. And then not only that is he saves his disciples in the storm. So Peter, he's the impulsive one. He's the loudmouth. He does things, says things without thinking fully. And so he hears, take heart, it is I. And he's like, all right, if it's you, like, tell me to come to you. And what does Jesus do? He says, come. And Peter walks on water. And then eventually, of course, he begins to look around and he sees everything around Christ. He sees the wind and the waves and he begins to sink. Now, when I was a kid, I thought this was a fascinating story, Jesus walking on water. I don't know if you ever tried this, and I was like trying to put my theology together as a kid. So he walked on water, then Peter walked on water. And then if I have faith like a mustard seed, then maybe I can do great things. So I remember standing at the edge of a pool and like, Lord, I have faith. You can move mountains. Peter walked on water and you step into the water, and then of course what happened? I fell into the water, right? There's only two people that have ever walked on the water. It's Peter and Jesus. And so I lacked so much faith in that moment. No, but here's what I would say. I don't define it as sinking. Yeah, I wouldn't say I stepped into the water and I began to sink. I think whenever you try to walk on water, there's two things that happen. You either walk on water or you fall into the water. It's not like, oh, here I go, Jesus, I'm going into the water. You know, it's not like quicksand. It's water. So very odd that Peter is sinking, right? And they have time to have a conversation about this. He's clearly not falling into the water, he's sinking. And what you see here is just this beautiful picture of what faith, doubt, and grace looks like in our life, right? There's moments when I'd say, man, I was ready. Like I got out of the boat and Lord, I had so much faith in my heart and you're like, come. And I'm like, yes, Jesus, I'll come to you. And then there's other moments in my walk with Christ where I just have doubts. And I'm like, I don't know if you're here. I don't know if you're showing up. I don't know where your love is and where your care is. And I'm looking at everything that's happening around. I take my eyes off him. And here's what I've learned in all of this, that the Christian life is grace upon grace upon grace. Friends, it was Christ that bid Peter to come in his grace. It was Christ that gave Peter the power to walk on the water. It was Christ that prevented Peter from falling into the water in spite of his doubts and loss of perspective. And it was Christ that brought him back into the boat. It was Christ, Christ, Christ. Recently, I received a testimony from someone that I didn't really know a whole lot. And just reading through the testimony, there was one thing that was a little bit unsettling about the testimony. And that was, this person seemed to be the hero of every faith story in their life. What they did, what they accomplished, how they were chosen. When you and I recount our testimony and our story, here's what I want us to hear. Jesus is the hero at every turn. He's the one in our moments of great faith that calls us to come. He's the one that gives us the power to do great things in life that we otherwise couldn't have done. Peter could not have walked on water apart from Christ. He's the one that in the midst of our sinking and our doubting and going, God, where are you? Where are you? He does not allow us to go under and fall in. He holds us. He reaches out his hand and brings us back up. The Christian life is about grace upon grace upon grace, and Jesus is the hero at every turn. So when you recount your story, who is the hero? Is it you or is it Christ? And finally, we see that Jesus sees his disciples through the storm. When you read another account of this, we have it in other books. other gospels. When they get into the boat, of course, we read right here that the storm stopped, but we also read that they arrived on shore. Jesus saw them in the storm, sent them into the storm, prayed for them, came to them, saved them in the storm, and saw them through to the other side. Here's what the Bible does not promise. The Bible does not promise that you and I will not experience hardship. Quite the opposite. The scriptures promise that in this life, there will be various kinds of trials and hardship and suffering that we will face because we live in a world that has been broken and tainted by sin, like all of us. So the Bible says there's going to be hard things that you and I have to walk through. But here's what it promises in light of that. It promises that our hardship and suffering do not get the final word. The final word is the resurrection of Christ and then the resurrection of Christ's people who ultimately get to experience the fullness of his salvation. The final word is, though trouble will come, God isn't finished. His redemptive plans keep moving forward, and we will experience the fullness of his salvation at the end of time. And so we live in this already but not yet moment in redemptive history. Jesus has already come, and he offers us life and salvation and forgiveness of sin. He offers to be with us in the midst of our trials and our storms. And yet we still have these trials and storms because he's not yet come back. And there will be a point in history and time that he will come again. And the book of Revelation says that he will wipe away every tear. Death will be no more. There'll be no more mourning. There'll be no more crying. There'll be no more hardship. And that we will dwell with our God and be with him for all time. But we're in the middle here, friends. And so in the middle, we need to recognize the great hope that we have, that Jesus will see us through the storm, that we will arrive on shore and the wind will stop and we will find firm footing. If you are in Christ Jesus, we have a hope, and it is an anchor for our soul because Jesus has conquered the grave and resurrected. And so no enemy we face can hinder us from this hope. I want to take you back to Shasta. Remember, there's a point in the story where he's just recounting his life and all the difficulties that he's faced, and he's just like, I have nothing left. I have nothing left. And he just starts crying and mourning over his life. Well, he begins to hear somebody walk beside him, and it's dark. And he has no idea. He's terribly frightened because he's heard where he is walking, there are great giants. And so he's terribly scared that this is something large, something very, very large, maybe one of these giants, and he's afraid. But then something unexpected happens. Whatever this is breathes on him. And the moment it breathes on him, there's a warmth that he feels, a comfort that he feels, and he finally speaks up. And this is what happens. Who are you? He said, barely above a whisper. One who has long waited for you to speak, said the thing. Its voice was not loud, but very large and deep. Are you a giant? Asked Shasta. You might call me a giant, said the large voice, but I am not like the creatures you call giants. I can't see you at all, said Shasta, after staring very hard. And then an even more terrible idea had come into his head, he said, almost in a scream. You're not one of those something dead, are you? Oh, please, please do go away. What harm have I ever done you? Oh, I'm the unluckiest person in the whole world. And once more he felt the warm breath of the thing on his hand and face. There, it said, that is not the breath of a ghost. Tell me your sorrows. And then Shasta just tells whatever this is, his sorrows. I do not call you unfortunate, said the large voice. Don't you think it was bad luck to meet so many lions, said Shasta. There was only one lion, said the voice. What on earth do you mean? I just told you there were at least 2 lions the first night, and there was only one. but he was swift of foot. Well, how do you know? I was the lion. And the Shasta gaped with open mouth and said nothing. The voice continued. I was the lion who forced you to join with Arvis. I was the cat who comforted you among the houses of the dead. I was the lion who drove the jackals from you while you slept. I was the lion who gave the horses the new strength of fear for the last mile so that you should reach King Loon in time. And I was the lion you do not remember who pushed the boat in which you lay, a child near death, so that it came to shore where a man sat wakeful at midnight to receive you. It was at that moment Shasta realized his entire life, every hardship, every difficulty, every point of suffering, that the lion, the great Aslan, had never left him. And he was there at every moment. Friends, I don't know what you are going through. I don't know what difficulties you're facing right now, what kind of sorrows you have in your heart right now. But I do know this. I know one who comes to us in the storm. I know one who prays for us in the storm. I know one that saves us in the storm. And I know one that will bring us to shore one day. And that is our King, King Jesus. And so may this be of great comfort for all who mourn and weep. You will be comforted by him. We're going to end by responding in a few ways. If you're here and you don't know Christ, the plea would be you trust him. Don't allow your difficulties to define you. Allow Christ to define you and save you from whatever's happening in your life. Also, if you've never made a public profession of your faith through the act of baptism, I would deeply encourage you. We're going to baptize here in a few weeks. And God, in his grace, has a couple people, I love their story, that they're going to declare to all that they are followers of Christ. He is the anchor of their soul. So if that's you, you want to get baptized, let us know. And then finally, we take communion. And we're told to do this act of communion until the second coming of Christ, when he does wipe away every tear. And there's no more mourning, but we live in the in-between. And so right now we declare what has happened and what will happen. And so we declare today that God put on flesh and blood, the man, the God-man, Jesus. At the end of his life, his body was broken for us. We were reminded of the body of Christ.